Good morning, Chair Bollendorf, members Garrett and Holmes, staff and guests. The lobbies are open and the recording has begun.
Thank you, Gretchen. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, May 20th, Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board Caucus meeting. We'll jump right into our first agenda item, which is an approval of minute meetings. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minute meetings as listed on the agenda. Do I have a motion?
This is Ali. I move approval.
Second.
So moved. And with that, we will jump into our first presenter this morning. So we've got an update from our Enforcement and Education Director, Larry. So Larry, I will turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you, Chair Bollendorf, and good morning, Board Member Holmes and Board Member Garrett. Just want to give a quick and final update on the onboarding process for me. As we know, I started here March 3rd, and I just wanted to touch on a few things that either I was asked in my initial assessments or asked in my initial onboarding with the three of you and the leadership team to kind of look into. I want to open by saying that we have a dynamic team of staff and leaders who spend a great portion of their time representing this agency in customer-facing interactions across the state, while also using their expertise. It looks like my camera cut out on me. Give me a second. I'll see if I can get it back up for you. All right.
Your mic also shows us not hearing you, but we can hear you despite what your mic says. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. The computer's going to pick right in the middle of my initial brief to you to decide not to work right.
We'll make
I'll continue with the brief and then we'll go from there. How about that?
That sounds fine. Thank you.
All right. So again, we have a dynamic team of leaders here in the division, and I will tell you that the one thing I will share with you is, it's been surprising and kind of motivating to see the interactions across the state, as well as the work internal to the agency. This includes everything from our data examiner, supervisor developing analytical tools to aid licensing and finance and our research team, to our education team and manager who's been working to develop and building education briefings that we use across the state and engagements. This includes our liquor and cannabis captains and lieutenants working with tribal officials and city attorneys to address public safety issues across the state as well. I think you all share with me, we have an excellent team of leaders in this division, and I'm lucky to be here supporting this team.
That's great.
So I think first I want to thank you all for your time over the last couple of months, your guidance and your perspectives and willingness to work with me. And I want to thank my two deputy chiefs. And the first topic I'll cover with you is policies. This is one area where I can honestly say this team has excelled, and we're already beyond my expectations. The division had a strategy document in place when I arrived, and it was due for update in 2026. So what this will do is this will allow us to meet within the agency's established process for updating the E&E strategy that was recently, with the agency strategy, that was recently published earlier this year. Based on the process my management analysts and I have developed, I expect we'll have an updated division policy that I'll, of course, brief to you all and to the leadership team, nested with the agency strategy and approved before the beginning of the year. When it comes to personnel, I think the first thing that I want to share with you is I have had an opportunity to review all the position descriptions for roles within the division and ensured alignment and the current needs and expectations. We didn't have many that we changed. We did do some updates based on LEO requirements and then also based on some of the specialty requirements for our team. The recruiting process, which I've briefed you on a few times, was already streamlined and robust, but we've reviewed and updated multiple things along that process. The main change that I implemented was an addition of a final interview at my level for the law enforcement officer candidates. This is before issuing a conditional offer through HR. This aligns with similar agencies who employ these personnel, and it allows us a final review before the significant cost that's incurred from a psychological evaluation and a polygraph. This is probably the biggest expenditure before the academy. Within the next few weeks, the 4 compliance consultant positions that posted last week will be hired and selected. This brings to completion the expansion of the education team to include our retail, liquor, and tobacco enforcement operations. This was a key part of what I was asked to do when I joined the team. And we'll have those personnel hired and onboarded at the beginning of the biennium. And then we expect them to be fully operational early in the fall. Any further changes to that program or to that process will follow a full assessment at their operational capacity. And I expect that to be at the beginning of the year. So this brings total for our liquor retail compliance consultants, that'll bring that number to 7. And it'll allow us to cover most, if not all, of the state, along with our liquor retail team. The DCs and I have reevaluated delegation of duties between their roles and mine, and reassigned several responsibilities at my level. These include final review of policies and procedures, rules and legislative proposals, as well as budget submissions, and of course, second offense settlement agreements. We'll reassess that semi-annually. And I know this was something that you and I talked about, Chair Volendroff. At the opportunity that you've had a chance to look at it and see some of those documents, I think we can talk about feedback on some of the language and the question that you've asked me in the past, but I'm interested in making sure that we're kind of meeting the expectation for the agency and for the board.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, as mentioned during the recent all-staff meeting, I have had the opportunity to meet about 50% of the division in person, and I plan to continue that engagement throughout the summer. Deputy Director Hood has joined me for a few of those visits, and we're hoping Director Lucella can join us when we go to Central Washington for a few events as well. When it comes to operations, in the first 75 days, we introduced an operational update process in collaboration with the deputy chiefs, the program managers, and the captains. What this process does is it enhances our visibility into enforcement and education priorities, and it also gives the captains the ability to share plans at the division level, just to ensure there's shared awareness across the state. This has been something that I think when we initially got started, there's so many things going on in so many regions and so many different parts of the programs here that the headquarters leadership team, the deputy chiefs, and myself wanted to be able to be a little bit more aware if we're aligned with agency strategies and initiatives, and I think we're there. And then the last thing for you all that I'll cover in onboarding is resourcing review. I did review the draft budget provided by Director Swanner. Once finalized through the agency director and we actually get a signed budget from the governor, I'll work with the deputy chiefs and the captains to better assess our equipment procurement process. We buy everything from radios to vehicles to occasionally uniform equipment and in some instances, protective equipment for going to some of these grow operations. This assessment will determine whether those current resources are being used efficiently and they actually meet our operational needs. Feedback from staff surveys, focus groups, and in-person meetings have helped me guide these reviews, and we'll continue to use that in the process. I did want to share with the board one thing. If I'm missing after this, it'll be Deputy Chief Lisa Rinke's fault, but Lisa Rinke has announced her planned retirement. We expect Lisa to retire here at the end of June after 37 years of exemplary service to the state. 2/3 of that career has been with LCB. And while her mentorship, her rapport with her teams, and her expertise will be deeply missed, we celebrate her well-deserved retirement. She's given me that effective date. We have some plans in mind for transition in the selection process. And I look forward to the opportunity to give someone a chance to promote into the position of deputy chief. Barring any questions, that's what I had for you today.
Thank you very much. Questions, Board Member Garrett?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions on the new law or whatever it was that went in effect in Seattle, the based on Pioneer Square and stuff of what they're requiring of those licensees, does that impact you guys and enforcement to enforce some of their new regulations?
No, when I originally saw the news story, this was right after I joined the team, and it's additive to the current state laws that are already on the books. We already look at unlicensed establishments. We already work very closely with the Seattle City Attorney's Office on establishments, both licensed and unlicensed, where we see disorderly work. Captain Garnis and Lieutenant Reeder, who are assigned to the Central Region, actually have an amazing rapport with a lot of the organizations and a lot of the leaders in city government. So what this does give us is a more clear picture when the city of Seattle has a concern about a licensed or an unlicensed business. And it gives us the opportunity to be able to determine whether or not we've had interactions with that licensee, whether we've had interactions with that location, and be able to provide that. The other thing that it does is there are times when they have issues with these unlicensed establishments and they're unable to close them. Our officers can coordinate with them and show up at the appropriate time to confiscate alcohol, which is a big problem around some of these locations, and also assess some of the environment internal for public safety issues that we can work with our state AAGs on. So the law didn't change our activities, but it does give us a few more touch points with the city attorney and the city of Seattle when they do experience these problem businesses.
So like one of the requirements I heard was they have to have 2 securities. Do we manage that to see, or is that the city making sure they have 2 security guards?
That is the city. What we do check for is when we go there, we are looking for whether or not the establishment is safe and whether or not there is something called disorderly conduct taking place in that establishment and around that establishment.
Okay.
Our work with licensees would be to ensure that they do have enough security to provide that safe environment, and that if they are serving alcohol in that environment, they don't serve to the point of overservice where disorderly conduct could occur. When we do see that, then we have the opportunity to either work with the licensee or write an AVN or charge them under Title 9A for disorderly conduct.
Okay. On this year, are you having the all enforcement staff conference?
I'm glad you asked that question. Yep. That was a big issue with the budget. So we usually get together and we have a full staff conference that gets together and we conduct training 3 days a week. I believe that's what you're asking about, right?
Right. Yeah.
We won't be able to do it in that fashion due to budget constraints. So what the planning team and I have done is we divided that up into an Eastern and a Western training event, and we're adjusting the hours so that we have the opportunity to travel there in our state vehicles, conduct the training, and then return at the end of the duty day within those normal hours, so we can limit the amount of hotels and the amount of per diem resources that we're using and still provide the state mandated training requirements that we have. We have a 2.5-day program that's put together right now. We're looking for locations both in Western Washington and then one at one of the regional academies in Eastern Central Washington.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Board Member Holmes?
Yeah, first, Larry, I look forward to having our next one-on-one together. I'll try to review some of these. I was taking notes, but I also hope between now and then I can take a look at some of the policies, particularly regarding settlements, things like that you touched on. Just love to see what some of the guidance is.
Sir, I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I have just a couple of comments. So first of all, you've been with us for just over 2 months, and it's been great seeing you integrate into your team and understand the work of the LCB. I agree with you. You have an amazing team in E&E who I've always been impressed with. The statewide nature of the work that you do, that we all do, but because you guys are in these outstationed offices, you really are oftentimes the face of the LCB to the community. And so I really appreciate considering your group group is the largest or amongst the largest of our employee groups within the LCB. I also want to take a moment to thank your two deputy chiefs for the work that they did in the transition between directors and to you, and the onboarding that they've provided and the help that they've provided you during this time. And I can't stop but take a few minutes to recognize Deputy Chief Lisa Renke and thank her personally for her years of service. She's been an amazing asset to the LCB, and I hope that she gets an opportunity to come before the board before her final day so that we can recognize her as part of our work here. I also wanted to say that let's see, I've got to look at my notes here. I wanted to acknowledge some of the changes that you've made that I think will help in the long run in terms of, final interviews for officers and, looking at the changes that you've talked about regarding the settlement cases, et cetera. I really appreciate your work there. My final, I have a question related to there, and I don't know the details, so just bear with me here. There was a recent multiple homicide in Pioneer Square in Seattle. And I don't know if that was in a liquor selling establishment or not, but I'm wondering, what role do we play in a community where an event like this takes place? So not focusing on what happened in Seattle, I'm just using that as a reference point, but when we have a situation like that occur in a community, what role do we play in that if it's an establishment that sells alcohol?
It's a great question. So we are engaged with the stadium, the ex-stadium process. This was a letter that was sent to Captain Garnis's team by the Seattle City Attorney. They shared the officers' reports. They shared the first responder details of what happened. And Captain Garnis and Lieutenant Reeder developed a plan to, one, meet with that licensee, determine if he has a security plan, and determine if they are in fact following the policies and procedures that are required by RCW. There have been 2 visits to that establishment in the last month. In both of those visits, the officer did not observe any issues of overservice. They did not observe any issues of disorderly conduct internal to the establishment. What we'll do in the future is we'll continue to work with both the Seattle After Nightlife Coalition and as well as that licensee to help provide advice on securing that establishment. But we will do some back checks or some review with police reports to make sure that those don't occur. Your more broad question of what do we normally do in situations like this, you see it around the hookah establishments. A couple of them are now opening in Tacoma and also in Seattle. Our officers are often doing compliance checks. They're often doing undercover checks with both the tobacco team and the liquor retail team to address those situations proactively. When we see overservice, when we see concerns of youth access, then we will cite and we will work with that licensee to educate. But in this instance, this one completely came out of the blue. There were no AVNs or identified issues with that from liquor and cannabis prior to this incident, but we will continue to work with the city now to make sure that they're at least in compliance with our liquor laws while the city handles the broader violence issue.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that update.
Yes,
Larry, on most of, and I'm asking a question,
sir.
on the incidents that are happening, are they're mostly happening outside of the establishments. Is that correct?
Exactly, and that was
Right.
a specific question to the deputy chief and I when I reviewed the actual police reports.
Right.
These happen in the parking lot, not in the view of security, which places it firmly in City of Seattle's purview. So our concern turns into, are there enough security inside the establishment? Are there overservice issues that cause this to spill out into the parking lot, and that's where the violence occurred? Or are there issues where violence could occur in the club? And as I shared on our last 2 visits, we didn't see anything internal to the club. There were security guards on scene, and there were no instances of underage or overservice.
Great, thank you. You know, the connection that your officers or our officers have with community are extremely important. And so, you know, our partnership with local law enforcement, of course, is critical to the work that we do. So I appreciate hearing how you partner with local law enforcement around this and other kinds of instances. So thank you. Okay, any other questions from board members? All right, Larry, thank you so much. Appreciate having you here today.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along, we'll go right into our next agenda item, which is our research program updates. And we're going to get a preview of a couple of new dashboards that the research team has been working diligently on. So we have Sarah and Nick to take us away for our next agenda item. We're thrilled to have you and hear this exciting update.
Thrilled to be here. Hello, Chair Vollendorf, Member Garrett and Holmes. So I'll just be doing a brief introduction and then I'll be handing it off to Nick. Today we'll be presenting 2 new dashboards that are currently live on our website for anyone to view and interact with. And quite frankly, what perfect timing to come after Chief Grant's briefing, because these dashboards are related to E&E and hopefully can showcase some of the amazing work that they are doing statewide and some of what you were just mentioning now, Chair Vollendorf. But to back up, these dashboards are part of our agency's larger foundational public-facing initiative, where our goal is to build out dashboards to help various internal and external stakeholders understand trends, develop calls to actions, and inform decision-making. We're particularly excited about these 2 dashboards, as these have probably been some of the most frequently requested dashboards to date. These have also been a reoccurring component in the dashboard bill that continues to be introduced during leg session. And while it hasn't been passed, I think this shows our commitment to responding to this feedback that we've gotten. So before I hand over the mic to Nick, I do want to call out that Nick has been such an instrumental part in developing these dashboards. So thank you. And we also could not have done it without our subject matter experts who are on the call here today. So Susan Ekstrom, our FDA program coordinator and expert, Mark Siegfried and Captain Rayfield, our LCB E&E data experts. And then finally, this dashboard initiative is agency-wide and includes members and leadership support across each division. And Chief Grant, thank you for your support in this as well. So with that, I will hand it over to Nick. And as always, if you have questions throughout, please stop us and ask along the way. And that's why we brought in the subject matter experts too, to help us with the questions you have.
Nick, before you start, I have one quick question. So, Sarah, you mentioned that these are have been amongst our most requested items, dashboards, etc. Can you, by whom? Like, who's interested in these dashboards? And just a broader question, you mentioned making these available to the public, but who are you hoping will utilize these dashboards? So 2 parts: who's been requesting, and then who do you hope, and how perhaps do you hope they'll use this information?
Yeah. So our public health and prevention partners have really been the ones that have really asked for these dashboards. And so one thing we're particularly excited about, and Kristen Haley, who is also on this call today, helped organize a listening session, and this stemmed from her public health roundtable last year. And one thing we heard from them is we were really interested in compliance checks, and we're also interested in drilling down by county as well. And so one thing that we really wanted to make sure that to have is this dashboard interactive that we can drill down by county. And so what we're hoping is that when people can go onto our website, they can customize it to however they want to. If they want to look by county, they can look by county. If they want to compare how their county differs to another county or to statewide, they can do that. If they want to look at how their county compliance rates differ by alcohol or by cannabis or by tobacco, they can do that as well. So we want people to be able to use it to what's relevant to them. And again, we've really heard from our public health and prevention folks and from our coalitions who are really interested in this data and again, the more local features as well.
That's great. And I have to say, you know, when I was first considering applying to be a part of the board, one of the things I did was went out and looked at what available data there was. And I was surprised that this was not already provided. So I'm, again, thrilled that we're at this point to make this available. So Nick, we'll turn it over to you and let you take it from here.
Thank you, and thanks, Sarah, for that introduction. Good morning, Chair Vollendorf and members Garrett and Holmes. I'm here to present these two data dashboards that have been published on our external site. The first is on compliance checks that are conducted by LCB officers, and the second is on checks that are conducted through the FDA program. So the links to the dashboards can be found on the research programs dashboard page. So if you go to resources, and then research and dashboards. That's the page that I'm on right now. And the two dashboards that I'll be sharing with you are these two, the FDA Tobacco Youth Access Inspections and LCB Youth Access Compliance Checks. I do just want to note that the dashboards do tend to work better on computer rather than mobile, although you can access them on your mobile phone if you want to. So for these dashboards, we wanted to provide a new way to visualize compliance rates. And when we talk about compliance rates at LCB, we're specifically referring to youth access, which is when an officer has an underage person attempt to purchase an age-restricted product using their real ID, and the officer then observes that exchange to see whether a sale is made. So compliance check data for liquor and cannabis is already published on the public records frequently requested lists page, but it's only provided in an Excel workbook. So it takes a little bit of know-how and digging to actually find the rates. So first, we have a dashboard on LCB compliance rates. This dashboard has data going back to 2015. And after the landing page here, which gives an overview of what compliance checks are, like I just did, first we have a page comparing compliance rates for cannabis, liquor, and tobacco vapor products. So if you hover over the graph, you can see the actual compliance rate for that specific year, as well as the number of checks that were conducted. There's a filter like Sarah was talking about here for county. So if you're interested in a particular county, you can use the filter to look at rates for that county. Now, there are other specific types of compliance checks for liquor and tobacco and vapor. So this page is really an overall view of these rates. So the next few pages really look into each one more specifically. However, there's only one type of compliance check for cannabis. So this looks really similar to what was on the last page, but there is also a table to make it easier to see the rates and number of checks that are conducted over time. But when we get into for liquor, there are three types of compliance checks, you could say. First is on-site, which is what you would probably think of when somebody goes to either a grocery store and purchases a bottle of wine or a six-pack of beer, or if they go into a restaurant or a bar and order a drink there. Those would all be what I would call on-site. Delivery and curbside pickup both started as temporary allowances during the COVID-19 pandemic. And privileges for takeout were made permanent in 2023, although my understanding is that authorization for delivery was not renewed by the legislature this year and will be going away in July. Next, we have tobacco and vapor compliance checks, which include separate rates for tobacco and vapor products, as well as what are known as SINAR checks. And SINAR checks are really a specific subset of compliance checks that are required by the federal government to be eligible for certain grants. They really function the same way, but there has to be a specific random sample that's set aside for these SINAR checks. And then finally, while all of these pages have had a filter to look at specific counties, this page gives a more visual representation of compliance rates by county. This can be filtered by year, as well as those more specific types of checks for liquor and tobacco and vapor. And there are maps here for liquor, for cannabis, as well as for tobacco and vapor. So moving on to the second dashboard, this one is much shorter and it covers compliance checks that are conducted by the FDA program at LCB. It's very similar, but also just slightly different. FDA inspectors at LCB also conduct compliance checks for tobacco, just like LCB officers do. But these checks are funded and directed by the FDA, and there are FDA-specific data management practices. So even though tobacco compliance checks are conducted by both LCB officers and FDA inspectors, they're conducted completely independently of one another, and we don't really even have access to the data that's related to FDA inspections. So the data that I used to create this dashboard comes from a publicly available online database where the FDA publishes results for compliance checks, and these are all checks that have been decided through the FDA adjudication process. Beyond this overview page, there's only one other page to this dashboard with compliance rates by year since 2011, when the FDA inspection program at LCB started. You can also see the number of checks that were conducted and the overall compliance rate. And there is another map similar to on the last dashboard in order to compare compliance rates by county. We currently plan on updating both of these dashboards annually. The raw data for LCB compliance checks is still on the public records frequently requested lists page. And I would like to add links to these dashboards to both the frequently requested lists page, just as another way to view the data, as well as to the FDA page of our dashboard. Much like Sarah, I do want to thank Captain Dan Rayfield, Mark Siegfried, and Season Ekstrom for their help as I created these dashboards. And they're also here to help answer any questions if I don't know the answer.
Great, thank you so much. Questions, Board Member Garrett or Board Member Holmes?
No, I just think this is great work. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Holmes, anything? You're muted.
Yeah,
There you go.
Yeah, thank you. I got it. Just a quick question. I know you use the term real ID for the undercover compliance checks and you are not referring, of course, to the federal requirements for travel that we've been reading about. But that's obviously in contrast to fake IDs. And you're not looking for that here, but does this shed any light on that, or can you talk to us about the problem? How big is a problem for fake IDs currently?
That's a great question. I think I'll let Captain Rayfield might have a better answer for that.
Good morning. This data would not capture that necessarily, but we do have methods to capturing that kind of data because we have a web-based application that we use on our phones to check IDs to see whether they're valid or not, and also the data entry from the electronic notebook. So, I mean, I would have to look at some of that data to be able to answer your question, but it depends on communities, like, say, for instance, Pullman and other college towns, for instance, might have more of that type of scenario than, general rural populations. So I don't know if I'm answering your questions or not, but.
No, that's helpful. Again, I was just wondering, how do you get your arms around that kind of a problem? By definition, fake IDs.
Yeah, a lot of times they're being reported by the actual licensees themselves. When we show up at the location, they'll say, "Hey, we found these fake IDs," or they have their security people find them and they report that to us. Or we have had officers actually be able to ID and find that information out on their visits.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And
I have.
and this is not reported that, as kind of a different angle. I'll follow up with you about, I know that the Healthy Youth Survey asks questions as a kind of a different angle about what % of youth are obtaining liquor, tobacco using a fake ID, I believe. So I'll look into kind of what self-report data. I know that's kind of a different angle, and that might have a different type of validity to it. And I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you, Sarah. I do know, just anecdotally, Member Holmes, from talking with officers, and Chief Rainfield talked about this, is that yes, by neighborhood, of course, and I think U District is another one of those neighborhoods where there's a high prevalence. And I'm assuming we do training with folks when they're getting a license, and that's part of it. I mean, yeah, but I think that fake IDs are still a real issue for some areas in particular. I have a couple of questions. So again, thank you so much for this work on the dashboards, Nick and Sarah. I think it's great information for us to have. So this is, we've been able to look at statewide data. We're looking at countywide data. I'm assuming that's as far as we drill down, because I'm wondering about one neighborhood data. I'm wondering about city data. I'm wondering about individual retailer data. Is that all stuff that we have, but it's not included in the dashboard, or how much can we drill down?
Mhm. Yeah, so with this dashboard, we do limit it to just county for now. I believe that is data that we have, but for the purposes of the dashboard, we thought that starting with county level would be a better way to drill down without being able to identify things like individual businesses.
Okay. Well, I do know, and again, I'm just one board member making a comment. I'm not directing policy by any means, but I do know I have spoken to community coalitions at the local level, and they're very interested in knowing compliance rates by retailers, and it's public. I'm assuming that's public information via a public disclosure request or whatever, but I just think that, you know, helping communities identify if there are problem retailers. The vast majority of our retailers do an excellent job of keeping product out of the hands of people who are age restricted, whether it be alcohol, cannabis, or tobacco. But there are some that do not, and just, you know, again, personally don't feel like that would be problematic. Oh, go ahead.
Can I do
Yeah.
I have two comments related to that. So the first comment is again, this is part of our foundational public facing dashboard initiative. And when we set this up, we really wanted this to lay kind of this very foundational level where we're creating a very strong base. And then we can start branching out from here. So this is a very complex project, and we're still at that very base level.
Infant, yeah.
So we're also at a very crucial part in our agency with our system modernization project, where we are really transforming the way that we're dealing with data internally. And for example, one of the things that we would love to do is be able to look at compliance rates by license type. So by grocer, or by like nightlife, or by spirit,
Taverns,
beer and
bars.
wine, right? But right now, the way that our data is set up, it makes it really, really difficult to do that. But we're hoping that our systems modernization project and our huge efforts that are going into that will make that more feasible in the future. So what we're really hoping to do right now is, again, make that strong base. And as our whole agency initiative is building our systems on the back end, we'll be able to build it out in a more fruitful way as we continue. Because we agree, we think there's a lot we can do with this, and we want to be able to grow strong as opposed to try to get everything in there all at once. But then as we build up, it's not sustainable.
Great, thank you. I do believe in transparency, and I think that I just had a conversation this morning where somebody was asking for information from us and they were directed to submit a public disclosure request. And to me, when we can provide data outside of having somebody do that, it's great to be able to have processes where people do this. So it's really exciting to hear about the future of this project. I have a specific question about the different compliance rates. So in cannabis, it was 94.4, liquor 81.8. This is statewide, of course. And then vapor and tobacco 86.4. Why is there such a difference? I mean, the cannabis industry looks like, I mean, and they do, I know this, do a fantastic job of making sure that we are in compliance with not selling age-restricted products to young people. But liquor is at 81.8%. So I have two-part question, why the difference? And then the other, is there a national benchmark? I think 81% is low, and just curious about a national benchmark.
Since we have the honor of Chief Grant being here, I'd love to hear his response to that. Sorry to put you on the
No
spot.
worries. Actually, we just had a meeting with the leadership team last week, and the compliance rate for cannabis is fairly high. We do think it's a lot of touch points. We get around fairly often to the compliant or to the cannabis establishments. We are fairly well enmeshed with that industry as far as making sure there's an ability for them to reach those compliance rates, and they just do a much better job at youth access and at access overall. For the liquor licensees, I think in some instances, at least the conversations that I've had with the captains and the leadership team, one, the sheer number of licensees, the sheer number and types of establishments, and then our ability to actually get out there and get people to those locations. So when you see a focus on a certain location, you may be doing well in the bars and the other retail establishments, but you may be impacted by some of the larger stores or some of the smaller gas stations who have compliance rate issues, and we tackle those. But overall, those numbers do seem to fluctuate when it comes to where we focus and the amount of officers we can put out there. As far as a national benchmark, I'm not sure yet. I would have to ask either Mark or one of the other data folks on the team. But I haven't seen a national benchmark in where we stand in comparison to it yet.
I would love that to come back some point, Larry, to the board. What is a national benchmark so that we can set our goal towards achieving that benchmark? Board Member Garrett?
Oh, no, I was gonna say, I think that, with it looks kind of right to me with the cannabis being high, knowing that the retailers know that cannabis is still not totally federal regulated and things like that. And being new and being conscious, knowing what AVN does, they have other, issues where if they get an AVN, it prohibits some of their banking relationships, different things that don't apply to the liquor industry.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that the cannabis would be higher to me.
Yeah. And I think we also have many of them who have processes, and maybe I can't recall if it's a requirement or not, but ID checks before you even enter the establishment versus alcohol, which, is served in so many different places. So I think that there are a lot of differences. However, I would love to hear more about what is a national benchmark, and just so we can see if there's things that we can learn from our counterparts in the cannabis industry to increase that rate.
I can do that. I will go back and do that research and also link up with Sarah. And then also we have an opportunity to see what, implementation of broader compliance consultants in this program are going to do. So we have a couple of opportunities to see how we impact that, but I will get with Sarah and the team and bring that back.
That's great. Sarah?
That's what I was thinking in terms of the compliance rates. Like when you go into, there's not other things you're shopping for when you go into a cannabis retail store. When you go in, you're purchasing cannabis. But if I'm going into a store that also sells alcohol, you can be picking up a bunch of other stuff as well. And so I think that there's a wide difference there as well. I will say that we, our research team, Tyler, Nick, and I had a meeting recently with a researcher who used our compliance rates in their research because they couldn't find other compliance rates. He was on the East Coast, and he couldn't find compliance rates from other states. And he was sharing how he was excited that we were transparent in sharing the work that we're doing and our youth access efforts and compliance rates. And so I think I'm sharing because I think we may have, I don't know if there is a national benchmark and standard, and I think it's a possibility that we could play a role in setting that standard, and being a leader of saying we want to be here, that this is what is optimal.
That's great. Well, I'm going to ask that both you and, oh yes, I see Justin just sent me a note. Justin, are you on?
I am.
Yeah, you want to go ahead and make a comment?
Sure. I was just going to share a couple of years ago, we did send a report over to the legislature identifying some of the best practice issues, which is we utilized a lot of those back in 2012 when we established the program for cannabis. And so you've got a couple different factors, I believe, that contribute to that high level. One is we set it up for 3 compliance checks per year per location, which was a best practice. Now, obviously, with different shifts over time with resources, we couldn't continue to do that, but we did that for many years. And as we cut back, we did see the maintenance of that high compliance rate. And so I think that contributes, and I believe enforcement's still doing at least 1 check per business per year, which, unlike alcohol with the almost 20,000 licensees, there's no possible way to get to that many. So I think that the frequency of the check and how it was set up certainly contributed to that. And I know that there's some NABCA paper from the Responsible Retailing Forum that talks a little bit about some compliance rates on the national perspective, and I can forward that to you.
Thank you.
Last
Appreciate you
week we
coming
were
on.
on par to make 1 per. So right now we are on glide path to make 1 visit per, and then we also still have those compliance consultants. So you're exactly right. Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Well, if I could ask, but let me just say one thing, and Member Holmes, I see your hand up. Larry and Sarah, if you could make sure and bring this conversation back to the board at some point, I'd ask you to do that. Okay, Member Holmes.
Sure. I just wanted to add that if we could understand better what national standards are for the number of compliance checks that Justin just spoke about, it makes me wonder if this 81% is actually maybe even understated, given that we don't scrutinize them quite as closely as the cannabis establishments.
Understood. We'll do that.
And Larry, before you leave, just going back to one other question that I had related to some of the information I saw on the dashboard. When I saw, and I just briefly saw this, but when Nick was going through the slides, looking at it by county, it looked like there was some consistency, but I did note that there were some counties that were higher or lower in terms of compliance rate for alcohol. Any speculation as to why that might be? So thank you for pulling that up. Let's say we've got one that's as low as 77. Maybe it's a small county, small N. I guess that's probably it. But any comment about that?
Yeah, those are Clallam, Ferry counties. Some of these further out counties, you're going to see probably more widespread and fewer visits. Our officers do cover that ground. They do get out and visit those locations. But I think you'll likely see probably the compliance rate may have some correlation with that. I'd have to go back and ask. I will tell you, when it comes to a good amount of distance between some of these locations, it does limit the amount of times our officers are going to get out there for a compliance check. But I mean, that's the one thing that I see just looking at it right now is the population for those counties is definitely lower. So there may be fewer licensees or less opportunities to visit. But I can bring that back also with the rest of that information.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, a couple of final comments. First of all, I want to make just an acknowledgement that the vast majority of our licensees do an amazing job of keeping product out of the hands of young people, and that is paramount to the work that we do here at the LCB. We want retailers to thrive and to do well and to excel in their business. We want to create a good business environment while we simultaneously look at these compliance issues. So just again, acknowledge the great work of our retailers of doing this work. And then I also just want to close by thanking Mark, Season, and Dan too for coming this morning and participating in this work and the work of the team. So thank you very much. Sarah, Nick, anything to close us out here?
No, just again, thank you so much. And great team effort and support in this. So just appreciate it.
All right, keep up the good work.
Thank you for the support of the project and for having us here.
Of course, thank you. Welcome anytime. Okay, so that takes us to our last agenda item, which is board member and executive assistant reports. Anything from board members today? All right, Gretchen or Deb?
Nothing today. Thank you.
All right, I'll adjourn the board caucus meeting. Thank you.